Three, two, one. We're live.
Good evening and welcome to the January meeting of the Morganton Planning and Zoning Commission. We'd like to welcome you here that are in the audience tonight, and I'd like to welcome our commission members back and a Happy New Year to all of you. Starting off, we'd like to go over and review the minutes we had. I think we received those for October. You've had a chance to review those. Are there any comments, additions, deletions, corrections? Seeing or hearing none, I move that those are accepted. Under continued old business would be a review of city council actions we had since our last October meeting. Lee, can you cover that for us?
Okay. There were two items of Planning Commission business that was taken up by the City Council at their October 2012 meeting. First being a rezoning located at 504 East Union Street, submitted by Foothill Services, just down the street here from City Hall. The request was from general business to office and institutional. If you recall, the Planning Commission had recommended approval of that request. Public hearing was held and was rezoned to office and institutional effective immediately. The second item of business was a consideration of a zoning ordinance amendment to eliminate the resident owner criteria within accessory apartments in association with single-family dwellings. You may recall that that was an item that the Supreme Court, North Carolina Supreme Court, had asked local jurisdiction to remove from their ordinances, and we had recommended that that be the case, and the City Council held a public hearing and also approved that ordinance amendment, so that is now in effect, and all of the criteria is also in effect.
All right, thanks, Lee. Any questions for Lee on that? Moving forward, next item of business on our agenda is for appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience that would like to come step forward to one of the podiums and present some of their ideas, concerns to our commission that aren't on our agenda tonight. Okay, seeing no one leap out of their seat, we'll move forward. On to new business. We have two items on our new business for tonight on the agenda. And as we get to each item, we'll ask for comments from the audience, members in the audience, as we get to each one of these items. First item of business is a consideration to rezone 2.42 acres of property, which is located at 618 East Meeting Street. And the request is to change from general business to light industrial. And this request is submitted by Harold Best, representing Foothills Fabricators. Lee, could you go over the staff?
Okay, if you'll turn your package to the rezone evaluation under case number 13-002, submitted by Harold Best for Foothills Fabricators. The property located at 618 East Meeting Street is currently zoned general business. General business districts are normally found along major roadway corridors where adverse impacts to residential properties are minimized. The zone allows a variety of commercial, service, and light warehousing uses. The requested zoning at this location is to light industrial. Light industrial districts are intended for a variety of manufacturing, fabrication, assembly, and warehousing uses. So it goes from more of a commercial retail type district to a manufacturing, fabrication, assembly type district. Many of these type of uses also can adversely affect the surrounding areas if they're residential in nature. The zoning district imposes large setbacks from property lines to help provide separation, and it also carries with it impacts such as noise, hours of operation, vehicular movements such as large trucks and light trucks, lighting, unsightly material storage. These kind of things can occur in light industrial districts in a traditional type zone. Normally these are located away from residential areas. If you'll pull up on the screen the zoning area map, okay, where the area is located, this is the site of the request. You can see there is an existing light industrial district, which was the Berglund manufacturing facility. This is the electric supply. I think it's Kreger Electric Supply, Rexel Electric Supply. been a number of electrical supply houses in the past. Back in the 70s, the property was actually zoned industrial. It was in a similar type zone of a light industrial district, but it was changed in 1985 to commercial. Access to the property is from East Meeting Street. East Meeting Street is a 2-lane major thoroughfare maintained by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. The roadway carries approximately 3,400 vehicles per day based on 2011 counts. And the current capacity of this roadway is 14,000 average daily trips, so the current vehicle count is well below the capacity. There's no plans presently by the Department of Transportation or request by the city to alter the roadway. However, the Mission 2030 plan does request that installation of bike lanes be considered when they do a resurfacing contract along that corridor. Water service to the site is available from a 12-inch city water line. It's located along the east, it would be the north side of East Meeting Street. The 12-inch line is adequate to serve both general business and light industrial uses at the location. Sewer is available from an 8-inch sewer line that's located along East Meeting Street in front of the property. It's an 8-inch vitrified clay line, which is an old material. However, it is currently sized adequate to service a dry type industry at this location, and the line capacity would probably not support a wet type industry that would have a lot of sewer usage. Also, this line is one of the ones that probably needs to be replaced as part of a capital replacement plan in years to come. The current land development plan, Mission 2030, proposes that this area of town remain a combination of residential and commercial use. And again, we'll go to the map in front of you. See if I can find that. There we go. This map indicates kind of the Mission 2030 general goals in the area. The hatched area, the green hatched area, is a mixture of commercial and residential uses along this entire corridor. You can see the industrial site is shown as a residential zone. So the general approach of Mission 2030 was to try to slowly eliminate industrial uses from the area and take it more to a mixed commercial type activity. Obviously, that has to occur over a long period of time as properties transition, become vacant. So the request is a little different than that. It's taking it a little more toward industrial classifications rather than taking it away from those. And so there's some interpretation there of what are the ultimate goals along that corridor. What do you want to see occur? Future rezonings. This area obviously is an area of transition. It used to be the main primary entryway and exit out of the downtown area, which carried much higher traffic counts back in the 50s and 60s. As bypasses and interstates were built, a lot of that traffic was diverted outside of that corridor and bypassed around the town. And so the use that you find in there now are secondary and third type uses along that corridor, and different sections of it are coming back with different types of uses. Smaller commercial type activities, office type uses. We've seen new residential multifamily uses being built. So it's a lot different corridor than what it was years ago. This request should not, the light industrial request could generate some similar type requests in the area. There are a few residential properties in the area adjacent to it, but there's not a lot of large properties in the area that could really be utilized for light industrial use. Spot zoning should not be a problem since it is adjacent to an existing industrial zone to the north. So spot zoning should not be an issue, even though it is somewhat against the land development plan. Staff recommendation. The applicant has made a traditional light industrial rezoning request. Traditional zones kind of group a lot of things into one category. Some of these are not very intensive, some of them are very intensive. Some can happen on a small scale adjacent to residential, and you probably wouldn't notice any difference. Some other ones would cause all kind of problems: outdoor speakers, outdoor storage, fumes, air emissions, lacquers, hazardous material storages, which can be fire hazards in residential areas. There's a lot of things that are allowed in light industrial that probably would not be compatible in situations like this. This is a uniquely situated property. I do have an aerial photograph here that we can turn up on. The property has been occupied for various industrial and commercial uses in the past. Residential properties have been built around it, which are also in their second and third life. There's some rental properties, some owner-occupied properties that are fairly close in and around the site. Certain type uses, again, could impact these surrounding residential areas if it was not done in a sensitive way. However, vacant industrial and commercial buildings are also not good in residential areas. That can be just as much of an adverse condition in the neighborhood as one that's occupied. At least it's being maintained, it's being reutilized. So I think our goal was to find uses that could be compatible with the adjacent neighborhood at this location. The owners, in talking with them, since they didn't initially submit a traditional rezoning or a conditional use request, but that conditional use type conditions to be placed on the property would be advisable. They seem open to the concept and to talk about uses that can be in there that would be more compatible with the area. They seem to be willing to accept conditions that would prohibit hazardous storage materials, something that would create a hazard in the neighborhood. They seem interested in accepting some conditions that would limit outdoor storage to where it's not debris and material, large quantities that would be stored outside. They also seem willing to limit outdoor equipment such as large compressors, vacuum type systems that have whining type noises, any loudspeakers where there's announcements being made around the site. They'd also be interested in limiting uses that would require any kind of air quality permit from the North Carolina Department of Environment, Health and Natural Resources Air Quality Division for emissions such as paints, varnishes, dust collection systems, etc. In talking with them after the request was made, they seem willing. They've gone through our table of permitted uses and circled various type uses that they would like to try to market the property to in association with their proposed use of a machine shop and a welding supply store. They're talking about electrical supply sales, and maybe lighting supply sales. So a little bit of both of what we've had in the past and a little bit more use of some of the wings of the building that are maybe not as open for commercial type development in this kind of low traffic corridor. So if that's something that the group wants to do, and the owners are certainly, we need to ask them to verify what I've just described. If they're okay with that, then what we would suggest is that we move this proposal forward to the City Council with those conditions and advertise it at the next meeting as a conditional use request, and we would prepare an ordinance that would have all these details specifically outlined that folks could look at and see the proposed uses and things of that nature, and certainly, stop by and look at the list that they've prepared and see if everybody's in agreement, if there's neighbors or property owners adjacent to there that have that interest, so that everybody's kind of on the same page and knows what to expect. So we would recommend approval of a conditional use type request.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Commission members, any comments or questions?
The adjacent property, which is the Burger Line property, is that conditional or traditional?
It is traditional.
It
It is a light industrial, so the uses that I just described can certainly be occupied here. The building has been reutilized just recently, and they're doing foam cutting for the furniture industry. But there's some other vacant space in that building that could be occupied. Yeah. It's had emissions. I've issued letters for air quality permits and things at that building in the past. But I also have had a lot of complaints over the years in that general vicinity of old industrial buildings that are emitting lacquers and thinners and stuff out of their spray booth operations and stuff that seem to kind of float across the neighborhood and puts off some odors and other concerns in the general area, not just at this specific site, but that whole East Union area. It's got a lot of different buildings. It's got a lot of different uses. Some are better than others.
Just comment, and I guess I'm dating myself here. This, as you said, this facility has been used for a number of different things. I can remember, I think in my childhood days, it was even a dairy.
Birch
It
Dairy.
was a dairy.
Sam Westbrook ran it.
Yeah, with a dairy bar that was retail in it. I certainly, for someone to speak about this, maybe the questions could be answered there. But I believe if we're talking about the main heavy part, if you want to call it that, of machining, that's primarily cutting oils and maybe a little bit of quench water and that kind of thing. Maybe I'm not sure what all of the machining pieces are these days, but certainly those would be considered, I think, low generation of any kind of chemical issue or something like that from my prior safety environmental days in the industry. But so I think that, along with the fact that the Berglund property is now again viable, says that we're going to be in this kind of classification of mixed business and garages and everything else that are still in that area for some foreseeable time. So without formally calling the motion yet, I would be in support of what you're saying with conditional use.
The conditional use would include a dry industrial use rather than permitting wet. Okay.
Do we need to deny the request and then ask them just to come back with a conditional use?
I think that we would prefer, and the owners would prefer, and again, probably need to ask them directly these questions so that they can verify what I'm telling. I won't put words in their mouth. They have an option on the property. They want to move forward with that option, and they would like to keep the process moving forward if they could. Since what we've advertised is really less restrictive than what we're recommending to move forward, and we've given the proper notifications of that, then it's a public meeting tonight, opportunity to request comments. I think we can move this request forward if everybody's in agreement without bringing it back and delaying it another 30 days. That would be my suggestion. I've spoke to Louis about this, and we both feel comfortable going in this direction.
Okay. Other questions?
Just a comment, looking at the limitations that are possibly would be recommended, limitations outside equipment such as compressors and loudspeakers. Would there also need to be limitations on just work production after a period of time if it were a light industrial zoned area?
Hours of operation.
Yeah, third shifts and that nature of that.
Any of those kind of uses or conditions can be mutually agreed upon between the owner or future owner and city. As long as you can reach a mutual consent, you can't add conditions that are unwilling to be accepted by the owner.
Other comments, questions?
I sort of feel like I'd like to see specifically in print the different conditional uses before we have a vote to pass it on to the council.
The different types of uses
Yeah,
that would be allowed.
yeah.
Well, I have that actually tonight. It's a quite a lengthy list. I guess that's why it makes it difficult to review in a meeting type. I mean, we could certainly adjourn for a few minutes and have everybody a chance to kind of look through it. But I do have a list that they're highlighted. It's a table of permitted uses out of the city's ordinance, that she has picked different types of uses that she feels comfortable with. There's some circled on the back side also as far as the manufacturing type uses. We've reviewed most of these and they seem reasonable.
You comfortable with it?
In fact, she just marked some this evening because we had 5 pages that ran that didn't get reviewed the other day. There's still some time that we need to look at it and make sure that it's complying with what the recommendations are as far as minimizing the impacts. But for the most part, the ones that I have reviewed appear consistent.
Okay.
Would you be comfortable with the city's staff's
Yeah,
determination?
I'm very comfortable with that, yeah.
And again, the council and there will be another public hearing process that the paperwork could be available to folks to take a look at, and if there's items in there that they don't feel comfortable with, then they can speak out against it. This is not like the final decision
Right.
that would be made if you were decided to move it forward.
Do we need a screen across the back between this property and the residential property?
That might be a question to ask the owners. I haven't been in the back of the property.
Yeah, and it's actually recessed, the property behind it is,
It is a little below grade.
it's below grade.
And it looks like there's a small amount of vegetation also back there. I don't know if it's a full visual screen, but if the building was to be built today, then even with the general business classification it's under right now, there would have to be a double staggered row of vegetation that would obscure the building from the adjoining residential property. So, can you do it today? I don't know. It looks like there's some pavement back there. It would probably take some effort to make that happen. It would probably prohibit them from adding on to the building, but without putting that in, if they were trying to do another addition or an improvement, which, I mean, the building's pretty much occupying all the property. There's not a whole lot of vehicular area around it, so there's not a lot of extra room to expand, especially with setbacks and other things. So it'd be difficult to add any square footage that would kick that requirement in.
That led up to my question on parking, as far as building square footage to parking, is that,
It
Meet
could
staff
probably
analysis.
works better from an industrial zoning than it does from commercial zoning, because commercial zoning carries a lot more parking, depending on the type of use, than a industrial type use, because it's based on number of employees, and generally the facility doesn't have as many employees as it would if it was a retail distribution place that had customers coming in routinely and trying to find a place to park.
any other questions? Hearing none, I'm gonna open this up to the public for comment. And what I would like to do is those folks that are here in favor of this petition, if you would, and if you wanna make comment, please feel free to step to the podium.
Wherever you wanna.
I'm Harold Best. What I've told Lee is, we're very small, 6 employees. All of our stuff is done inside the building. The place that we have now, there's absolutely nothing outside because we deal with steel, and anything that's rusted gets rejected. So we're very small, and everything is done inside, and I'm not gonna have any storage or any racks or pallets, racks or steel kept outside, so I just wanna let you know, it's very small, company, we're trying to grow, but, all of my stuff is done inside. So we don't have any outside activity whatsoever. And as far as parking and stuff, there's 5 people, so it's not a great big place that's moving in there with a lot of machining going on. It's just a small company. So,
Questions from the commission? I have a question on hours of operation. Do you have a proposed idea of that?
currently we go home at 3:30 in the afternoon. We're
Good.
trying to get bigger. I would say never have a third shift. We may work till 6, sometimes we're there till 7 o'clock at night when we get really pushed for a few things, but generally we don't work Saturdays, and we're not there late at night. And right now, there's no need for a second shift, I never have.
What would you say the noise level is in your manufacturing?
It's all inside, it's just lathes and mills. If you stood outside the door with the door open in that building, I don't think you could hear what's going on in the parking lot. It's not great big stamping machines, it's not great big normal machining. It's mills, Bridgeport mills, lathes, and a couple of saws that cut everything. That's pretty much what we do. It's not even a typical machine shop. We make small parts. We drill holes and put slots in these certain things for a couple of customers that depend on us, but it's not your regular machining shop. It's called Foothills Fabrications, but we don't do normal machining like a James Tool, that type of place where they do tooling and have a lot of, they have a lot of fluids and a lot of stuff. We don't even have any CNCs, so it's just a very small operation.
Maybe I help the question, do your employees require hearing protection or something like that when you're operating machinery?
I do, just because you're supposed to, and they wear their glasses and ear protection, but there's nothing that we have is very loud. Unless they drop something on the floor, that's the loudest thing, but
Your product deliveries or shipments?
back of my pickup.
Back of your pickup and coming in, same way?
Yep, couple pallets in the back of the truck, and we go with that.
How much of it,
Oh, incoming, it's a Benco truck, a 20-foot truck.
20-foot truck, okay.
We don't take any, none of our stuff comes on tractor trailers, we're not that big. It all comes on small 20-foot Benco trucks.
You
Twice a week.
plan any expansion in the near future, or you just go?
I hope, no, on the building?
Yeah.
No, not on the building, there's no room.
Talk about it in terms of employment, that type of thing.
Yeah, my goal is 5 or 6 more people.
Good.
I'd like to hire 5 or 6 more. Right now, we have, I think, five guys, 5 and a half, working now, and that's what it's been for the last 2 years.
how much of this building would you be actually occupying for this? I've understood that perhaps the
7,000 or
retail
8,000 square
maybe
feet.
still there.
7,000 or 8,000 square feet. I mean, that's what I need. That's all the room. That's all we have right now.
I know that was like a third of the site or a fourth of the site or something.
Less than that. It's 26,000. We probably need 7,000 or 8,000 of it. It's much bigger than what I need, but I want to grow a little bit.
Now, Harold, you said your hours of operation are limited, but you obviously going to lease out the other 15,000 square feet.
Rexel is there.
Do you want to limit any kind of hours? Do you want to, I guess, accept as a condition
Sure.
an hour
Mhm.
limitation
No problem.
on the site for
The
other
only
folks?
plan we have is to have Rexel move to the building, to stay in the same building, the company that's there, the electric supply. That's been offered to them to stay, and then we're gonna take the other part.
Okay, any other questions, comments to Mr. Best? Thank
So
you, sir.
whatever conditions apply to your operation would also apply to the entire site, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
While we have you at the podium, a question to you is, are you comfortable with this conditional use amendment, if you would, to your request?
Yes.
And you understand the implications of that and what our commission is trying to
Right.
do? Okay.
No, and we've told Lee that we're open to whatever we need to do.
All right, we appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this request? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak against this request? Okay, seeing that, I'm going to close the public portion of this agenda item and bring it back to the commission. I'd like to have comments, questions, or a motion.
Well, it's the sort of thing that I like to hear, a small company starting and expanding. That's been the bedrock of so many companies that started in this town. And I think to me, that's the future of the town. Not the big ones, but the little ones. I'm hardly in favor of this.
Okay.
You need that in the form of a motion.
Well, I think that, as well as if we're going to carry this to the conditional use
Okay.
level,
If you word the-
I
if
think
you
we
word
need
it-
to have some kind of loose wording that
Yeah,
the staff could take. That's my suggestion and opinion.
Yep,
That the
that's
staff could
fine.
take and then take this to the
I
next
would
level.
make that motion, yeah.
Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Sasser. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Bring it back to discussion. I think what we need to do is kind of formulate for you, Lee, would that be helpful? As to how this is to be set up as a conditional use. I think we've discussed to some degree the table of permitted uses. I think with interest of time, we allow the staff to analyze and make that determination.
I think there's uses that she hasn't marked, that she doesn't want to allow, or Harold doesn't want to allow. It's almost easier to put those type of uses in this ordinance that says, okay, these are the type of uses that will not be permitted. Because there's a whole bunch of them that are permitted that, I mean, that's really not gonna be a problem. I think we wanna give good examples of this type of use would not be allowed, this type of use would not be allowed, this type of use, or any other uses that would have outdoor storage, storage of large quantities of hazardous materials,
Outside.
anything outside manufacturing, outside fabrication, assembly, banging, all that kind of stuff. Anything that has large compressor, outside compressors, loudspeaker, we kind of set up a basic framework. Emission systems, anything with an emission system would not be permitted.
And the wet industry should be.
Wet industry
Yes.
not be permitted.
Yeah.
Anything that would put large quantities of sewer into the sewer system would not be permitted. So that's a pretty good limitation group. I think most people can make a reasonable interpretation of. And if if there was ever a question, if something was borderline, then it could go to the Board of Adjustment and let them interpret, which is the best way to do it. But for the most part, the staff would be able to look at those guidelines and say, yeah, that use works. No, that use doesn't work. It's too much like the things that are prohibited. That would be the way I would approach it.
Okay. Jackie, are you comfortable with what we've discussed here and getting that in the form of a understandable motion? Okay. We've had a motion and a second. I call for the question that we approve this as a light industrial conditional use zoning. All in favor? Questions?
There was discussion about hours of operation limits. Is there a time that you want to set in the ordinance? Most neighborhood business has basically 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So business type operations, you could put that kind of limit on there. It would be consistent with other limits that we have of similar type nature. Because I don't think we really discussed the time. He said 7 or 8.
My feeling is that he mentioned that most of his processing and activities done inside the building. So I think that's a good limit on any kind of noise issues that you'd have. Counterbalance, I think, the hours of operation.
Okay. So don't worry so
I
much
don't
about
think
the
worry
hours of operation, just as long as it's inside the building.
Correct.
Okay. So everybody good with that?
I think we have a,
If you wanna do hours, keep it consistent with the 10
Yeah.
o'clock, if that's more,
6 to
generally
10
allows
would be,
more or less
yeah.
a second shift operation,
Mhm.
so.
or would you be
Pretty much.
comfortable with that?
10 o'clock is fine.
Does that restrict
think, as long as it was done, it's not a full operation, it's running. If you utilize some of it for commercial purposes, a lot of businesses want to stay open till 9, just selling to their customers. So I wouldn't want you to shut down too early, because it really limits your operation.
Usually we stayed up till 2 in the morning packing stuff, it's just her and I, but
Yeah.
it's not noisy.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that nobody can be on the property. I think it's just mean that it's not a full-fledged operation consistently that's going on. I think that's the intent.
Yeah, our intent's to try to strike a nice balance to encourage your operation,
ownership.
contribution economically to our community, but at the same time, be attentive to adjoining neighbors.
I've got reservations about trying to set hours at this stage. Because you've got a small industry, and if they had a rush job, they had a time factor, they might work till 10, 11 o'clock at night. I
Just leave it out.
I just don't see that we should touch that subject at this time.
Well, like I said, the operation being in the confines of the building, I don't think we're gonna deal with issues
I don't
of
think
noise.
it'll be a problem, based on what they've been said.
No. Do we
I
need,
heard kind of both sides.
okay,
I have no big reservation on that.
let's do it individually. Do you have any reservations on setting times or not?
Not at this time, no. I mean, based on what they have said about their operation.
Okay. I think at least we have a majority in that respect.
All right, so we'll leave that out for the time being, unless something comes up at the city council.
And I think when we call for the question, I think we are in unanimous agreement.
He also had a question in regards to screening. Are we going to approach that? Screening to the rear of the property?
There was some discussion
There
about
was
it.
some discussion, but I think with the existing chain link fence,
So it's okay.
I think that's more than adequate at the present time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to condition it that not be removed?
I would say yes.
Right.
That it at least stay in place? Okay. So what's there now? No removal of existing vegetation? Unless this falls over.
Unless it becomes a hazard, yeah.
Right. Okay. That's,
Yeah, we got you thoroughly confused, Jackie.
that sounds. All right, that item then will go to public hearing at the February 4th city council meeting, and it'll be in this council chamber at 6 p.m. And again, we'll notify the property owner, adjoining property owners, sign will be posted and ad will be placed in the paper.
Thank you. Next item of new business is consideration to rezone 5.8 acres of property. The property is located at 806 Jamestown Road, and the request is to change from residential high to general business. And this request is submitted by Keith Bowers with Maximum Metals. Lee, would you give us the staff's evaluation on this request?
Okay. This is almost a repeat of the last request, but it's a little different, but similar type approach that we seem to be having here. Okay, again, turn in your package to that particular item. Mr. Keith Bowers with Maximum Metals has submitted a request to rezone 5.8 acres of a 6.57 acre tract of land located at 806 Jamestown Road. The current zoning of the portion that's being requested for rezoning is residential high, and if you'll refer to the map on the screen, the property, the front 200 feet is zoned for general business purposes already. The rear portion, the 5.8 acres in the back of the property, is zoned for residential high purposes. There's some residential high on this side, residential high on this side, commercial in the front. There's a tire dealership directly adjacent to the property in the front. There's a small computer service center, store, and another small shop across the street. and then the flea market and stuff is further down, out Jamestown Road, coming back into town. The property under consideration is split again into two zoning districts. Residential high districts permit a wide variety of residential uses, including single-family homes for a subdivision type development. It also allows multifamily development at 13.5 dwelling units per acre. So for an apartment complex, condominium type development. RH districts also permit Class A mobile homes that are on individual lots. It would be inside the city. They would have to be double wide type units on a permanent foundation. They also allow mobile home parks under special requirements. That is at 4 dwelling units per acre maximum. It requires a special permit that would have to be approved by the city council and the staff. The RH district also permits large child care type facilities and home occupation service type businesses. The requested zone into general business would allow a wide variety of commercial and retail uses, high-density residential uses, office uses, service uses, things of that nature. GB districts are normally found along the major thoroughfares where proper utility services and infrastructure is located and away from single-family areas where possible. The property is located along Jamestown Road, which is a major thoroughfare classified by our thoroughfare plan and by the Department of Transportation. It's maintained by the Department of Transportation and has direct interstate access at exit 100 to I-40. The latest traffic counts in 2011 indicate an average daily count of 11,000 trips per day. Current capacity of Jamestown Road is at 12,000 average daily trips, so it's nearing its capacity, however, is under capacity. There is a plan. The city's thoroughfare plan indicates that Jamestown Road, the next widening would be to a 5-lane section. It indicates or anticipates that kind of widening should take place probably by 2025 based on the growth that is occurring in the area to accommodate any increased demand. There has been some improvements along Jamestown Road further out to 3-lane sections where there is a center turn lane to accommodate for left turn movements. And some of that was done as development took place, commercial development took place further out Jamestown Road. The property does have access to a 12-inch city water line along Jamestown Road, and this 12-inch line would accommodate any type of GB use and any fire protection services related to that type of use. Sewer, there is limited access to city sewer on this property. There's an 8-inch city sewer line on the opposite side of Jamestown Road. It is adequately sized for commercial use, and it's a well-built line of proper materials. However, the large majority of the 5.8 acres that is being rezoned slopes away from Jamestown Road, so it's falling towards Silver Creek. Sewer generally needs gravity to flow, and without installing some type of pump system, getting sewer from the backside of the property to the actual sewer line that's in the Jamestown Road would be a challenge. But roughly half the property then could be developed and gravity flow, and depending on the grade of the elevation of the final building that would be placed on the property. And you have a topo map in your package that shows that. So you can see it. There we go. And so you can see all the lines falling back towards Little Silver Creek. And got the top of the knoll, on Jamestown Road, and here's the sewer line with the manholes across Jamestown Road. So really about from this point, sewer line's about 9 feet deep in the road, so you could go back to where it's about 3 feet above the line, and you should be able to build a line across the front of the property in time. Mission 2030 plan anticipates commercial zonings along the Jamestown Road corridor. We've seen this slowly occur over the last 10, 15 years. This is out of the Mission 2030 plan. All the areas in red are anticipated over the next 20 years to go to commercial, which basically leaves the River Hills development as kind of the only residential area, large residential area in this section. There's also a small track along, and I can't remember the name of the road, out near the Ford dealership. There's a fairly well-developed single-family area there. And there's the large apartment complex that's in this section. So the request, which is in this general area, would be in compliance with planned land use. Future rezonings, the city does anticipate more commercial rezonings to take place over the coming years along Jamestown Road. There are adjacent residential properties that contain large amounts of open space, basically on these tracks up through here. They're very deep, and there's residential homes across the very front of them, but there are large tracks on a major thoroughfare with interstate access, so the likelihood of this commercial zoning expanding in the future is increased each time we do another rezoning out in that area. This will probably decrease the single-family residential character along the corridor, and so we will probably see some of the residential living conditions diminish as more traffic, more noise, more cars, more different types of uses occur out through there. Spot zoning would not be a problem since the front portion of the property is already zoned general business, so we're not doing anything out of the way here. It does kind of leave some vacant residential properties on both sides. This almost becomes a spot zone by itself. It's residential, although it's lower classification than what the adjoining properties are, so that's really technically not a spot zone or a legal discriminatory type zoning. It's just left over. As time goes on, those gaps probably get filled in. Primary impact of surrounding land uses would be increased traffic flow along Jamestown Road, increased delays on left turn movement since it's only a 2-lane section through this area and there's no center turn lane. There are quite a few types of uses that can adversely affect the adjoining residential areas. These can create noise, light, glare, storm drainage discharge, late night operations. There is a standard screening and buffering device required for a new construction type project along any adjoining residential line. So any line, if the property was zoned commercial, this entire line would have to be screened with a standard device, as well as this line here. That would eventually have to be a 90% opaque screen, basically a double staggered row of Leyland cypress. We talked about that last time. The city does require some site lighting standards that are standard. They have to be new lighting would have to be directed inward to the site and downward. In other words, we don't want light straying across the property lines and glaring into people's into the windows. So we have some standards for that already in effect. Impervious surface limitations are also in effect, so there's some limits about how much hard surface and buildings can actually be placed on the property to protect water quality along Silver Creek and any stormwater drainage discharge. Again, this is a similar request to what we had last time. We have a traditional general business zoning request. It's a little different in that the land development plan is saying that it should go to general business, so it's more in compliance with the land development plan. There are a number of residences remaining in the area that are close by that could be negatively impacted from any development of the site. Again, we would offer up a potential for a conditional use request to help reduce any negative impacts that may occur. Again, hours of operation, types of uses. We don't feel quite as strongly about having limits on this one as we did on the last one, since it is an area in transition and going in the direction, this request is more consistent with what direction it's actually going in. So, and there's already some conditions in place. So if the owner was willing, and he seems willing to potentially talk about those, but he has not submitted a conditional use request yet. And Mr. Bowers is in the office, in the room, that he can answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Lee from the commission members?
What are the buildings that are
Yeah.
in existence there now on the, on that property?
There's an old farmhouse that honestly is in disrepair that, you know, is a blight for the area. And then there's two barn-type structures behind that house. I think, from talking with Lee, I think the house was used for a haunted house a number of years ago. I think a year or two before I moved into the area, so that was about 7 years ago.
And let's see, you're Mr. Bowers, correct?
Yes, I am.
And what, do you have your address, please?
My home address?
Yes.
5888 Holiday Shores Avenue, Nebo.
Thank you, sir.
You can see the house situated about right here on the property, and the two barn structures in the back.
Has this always been one contiguous piece of property?
I believe it has.
And your intents are to take the existing structures?
We would remove the existing structures, and, you know, the plan is to build an approximately 15,000 square foot facility for our business.
Okay. And what, a little bit more about your business, if we may ask as far as...
The gentleman that appeared before me kind of stole my script. Like him, we are a small business. It's my wife, myself. We have one full-time and one part-time employee right now. We've been in business 3 years. My wife has been in this industry for almost 2 decades, about 16 years. And, you know, we're a small operation. We supply prime metal to area businesses that manufacture things. So our primary focus is on aluminum, stainless, copper, the higher value metals. We get them in different forms: coils, bars, sheets, and basically, you know, just warehouse and distribute. All of our activities are inside, like the gentleman that spoke before me. Our stuff is, I don't really feel comfortable with it under lock and key inside a building, let alone leave it outside. So, you know, it's fairly high value stuff.
So you're more distribution than, say, manufacturing or cutting
So
down?
we do have a metal saw that we do some limited cutting for one customer, but we don't get involved with fabrication or, you know, we're a warehousing distribution concern.
That's the difference between the last applicant metal working type operation and this one. He falls more into warehousing and distribution, which general business would accommodate.
Would future planning entail more of the 5.8 acres that this...
As Lee spoke to, you know, the site really doesn't lend itself to a bigger facility. You know, and that's one of the things. There's a Duke Power right-of-way also that cuts through there that would limit, you know, how much you could actually do with the entire property. Our idea and our goal is to find something that is affordable for us to put a facility up that'll meet our needs, and you know, that's really what our plan is. So I would anticipate that, you know, we're only going to use half of the site, if that. The way it's configured, you know, you have the narrow portion that's off the street that's basically just going to be a drive back through. And then we would probably use the first, I'd say 200 feet, you know, or maybe not even that much, 150 feet from the point where it opens up, you know. And,
So basically, the footprint that the existing buildings are on is...
is probably where we're going to be at, yeah. And Lee spoke to also the concern about the sewer, which he was kind enough to bring to my attention after I first met with him. You know, the way our building basically is just a warehouse, but, you know, the office space will have, you know, a couple of restrooms and a small kitchen. And I would anticipate that we can, you know, locate that portion of our facility in an area that we will have sufficient gravity fall to meet the sewer out at the road.
And your, the power easement with Duke Energy, is that diagonal across the property?
I believe it is, yeah. It kind of cuts, looking at it, the right side, it kind of cuts about halfway back, and then it diagonals to the rear left corner. So kind of, yeah, right there.
So by placing your restrooms in that portion of the building where you're going to build it, the pump would not be necessary?
I don't anticipate it would be, no. I think we have, based on, I had a meeting with Mark Hall from the Development and Design Department out at the site after Lee brought it to my attention. And I think we have about 600 feet of run, you know, from the sewer line at the road back into the property based on the elevations. And, you know, I'm not a civil engineer, but, you know, I've been involved with some construction, and I think, you know, within the confines of what we have available to us, that we'll be able to locate that portion of the facility that we're not gonna have to deal with a pump station.
I can confirm that. Our engineers have indicated that depending on how they set the pad elevation, they should be able to make it work for what they're needing to do.
And you did discuss with the city staff about the conditional use possibilities.
We have talked about that, yeah.
What are your feelings on that?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, if the conditions are reasonable, you know, our operations, much as the gentleman that spoke before me, you know, we're 7 in the morning, you know, till about 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon, no Saturdays. So I mean, I wouldn't want to limit it to 3 o'clock in the afternoon having to quit, but we don't run a third shift or anything like that. So, and I don't anticipate we ever would. I mean, you know, we hope to grow some and you know, employ some additional folks from Morganton, but having a 100-person operation isn't in the cards for me. I've managed those kind of situations before, and I'm too old for that anymore. So.
Any other questions, comments?
Do customers pick up what they buy from you, or do you deliver?
Not usually. I would say on the order of a year's worth of business, we probably have maybe a half a dozen to a dozen pickups. You know, our trucks deliver, we have a 16-foot flatbed and then about a 10-foot, you know, flatbed. And our trucks take it out and deliver it. We don't have we're not a retail business, you know. We don't have a retail trade. We've had a few people that have found out about us that come in and want to buy a piece of this or a piece of that, and we try to accommodate that. But our business is dealing with machine shops, much as the gentleman that was here before, you know, that type of situation. You know, a couple bigger companies down Shelby Way. You know, we have a select list. You know, my wife, having been in the business and having worked with a couple of the biggest companies in the world that do this type of thing, you know, was able to ascertain what she wanted to do when she would finally get her own business. And, you know, we were able, fortunately, to, you know, just deal with a select few companies and, you know, service them well. And, you know, it doesn't create a lot of headaches every day, so.
Primary reseller.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we purchase from mills or larger distributors that are, you know, in the same kind of business that we are, and then resell to the companies that manufacture things.
Anything else? Other questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Since we've already opened this to public comment, is there someone else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the request?
I have questions about.
Please come forward.
Thank you.
And if you will state your name and your address, please.
Yes, my name is Martha Chapman, and I live at 807 Jamestown Road. And that's directly across or a diagonal from the property that's in question. My first question is, the property value and taxes, how is that going to affect my situation as a property owner?
I can answer.
Well, to make sure we're clear, you're wanting to know if your property tax valuation will be affected? Is that your
Yes.
question?
If they change the zoning across the street?
Yes.
Okay. Based on my understanding of how the tax office does their appraisals, they do not take zoning into effect when they do their appraisal. It's based on the current use of the property. So if yours is residential, used as residential, they appraise it as residential. Theirs, it would be used as commercial. Theirs would be appraised as commercial and evaluated that way. That's my understanding of how they do that. I don't think one impacts the other one.
Okay, great. Okay, what is our community environment state going to be affected by this? I'm not sure. He's talking manufacturing or, well, industrial, I'm not sure, ironwork.
You want to come over here?
We'll come to
There's
that
another
one.
podium.
If you would please address your questions to the commission, and we'll make sure that they get answered for you. So your question is the impact of operations to what? You?
To our community, to our environment, as far as noise ordinance, the air pollution, or anything of that nature.
Okay.
How is that gonna affect us?
Well, let's ask the ultimate user here what their plans are.
As far as emissions, environmental issues, we have none. We don't have solvents, we don't have paints, we don't have lacquers, you know, it's things. It's just, you know, metal pieces. The same as a box of widgets would be at another facility. As far as noise is concerned, if you're bothered by the tire shop that's currently there right now, you'll continue to be bothered by the tire shop. Because, you know, they have open bay doors, they have air ratchets going off. I mean, it's a fairly noisy operation there. My operation is inside. You know, I'm within the confines of my walls. We have, you know, usually no more than 2 trucks a day that deliver items to us. They back into our facility, we unload them, and they're gone. So they're there for a matter of, you know, 15 minutes, if that. You know, the forklifts inside our building have a backup alarm, but there again, you know, if it's inside the building, so you're not even going to hear that. I don't anticipate any impact, really, that you would notice today versus when our facility is located there.
Did that help answer your question?
Yes, and also it answers another question. Granted that he doesn't expand anymore as far as trucking in and out of his facility at all times of day and night,
No.
that it's increased more than 2 times of day.
Okay.
You understand?
Well, I'm
I
not
understand
going
you-
to say that I'm not going to have 3 trucks one day and 4 the other day and only 1 the next day. I mean, it varies, but on average, you know, it's a couple trucks a day, and our trucks leave usually 1 time a day and come back. So, you know, I think honestly the best thing to say is I'm not going to turn this facility into a distribution warehouse that there's trucks coming and going constantly, you know, day after day, hour after hour, night after night. You know, our idea, my wife and I, when we developed this business and started this business, was to have a business that we could offer some opportunity to others, but to have something that was manageable for us to do and also allow us the opportunity to have a life outside of a business. I grew up in a family business up in Ohio, and just real quick, it was a restaurant catering business, and it was 7 days a week, 16-hour days. My dad probably worked 20-hour days. And, you know, I learned early on that, number one, it wasn't a good business to be in because there's just so much to it, and you couldn't really walk away from it. It was 7 days a week. And I swore right then when I left this business after about 15 years that I would never own my own business. And, you know, once I found out about my wife's industry and her business and the opportunity that was there for us to have a good concern, but yet not have to sacrifice our whole life for it, that's what brought us into it. So, you know, we're currently located in Morganton, and, you know, we would love to stay here, you know, but we're not retail dependent. We don't have customers that we have to depend on that are going to be coming and going every day, you know what I'm saying? So if another type of business would locate there that had a retail type situation, there would be a lot more traffic than what we're going to have.
Did that help you, Ms. Chapman?
Yes, may I continue? The operation hours, Mr. Bauer? Oh,
Well-
I'm sorry, council. I'm confused.
If you'd like to address the.
There again, like I said, speaking of the gentleman that had spoke before me with his business, you know, we're about 7 in the morning. My wife drops my daughter off at Freedom, and she gets in the office about, 7 o'clock in the morning. And our trucks are usually out on the road, 9, 10 o'clock, and we're finishing up usually by 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock. So if the normal hours that evidently you've set are 6 to 10, I mean, I would feel comfortable writing something like that into the conditional use. It would allow us some flexibility, but yet you know that at midnight, there's not going to be trucks and traffic and all that kind of thing, so.
Also, for the council, is there potential for expansion of this road? the road to be expanded
As
then, being that
As
this
Mr.
business?
Anderson explained, you're talking about the Jamestown Road.
Yes,
Yeah, I think in the state's plan, it's probably not funded or scheduled in, what is it, 2000?
Well, there's nothing funded
It's not
over the
funded.
next 7 years along
Okay.
Jamestown Road that I'm aware of. Although they recognize there's more and more traffic there,
yes.
and a widening will have to take place at some point in the future. They just haven't indicated when.
Okay, all right.
It's always a matter of dollars.
There you go. I was waiting for that. I was just wondering if my tax dollars were going to help to that, so I had to ask.
Someday.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Now, I will remind the commission that this is not a conditional use request at the present time, so all the conditions that we're discussing here and ideas have not been formalized yet. So, although they seem willing.
Continuing with our public hearing, you'll have another person that would like to address the commission.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Tapp, and I live across the street too.
What is your address, Mr. Stafford?
Tapp?
Tap.
I live at 101 River Hill Drive. About the sewage line, when they built white tiles, I woke up one morning and went out, and my whole yard was dug up because they ran the sewage to my side of the street because that's the side that it's on. I just want to know, is that what you're going to do this time?
Your concern or question is that when he installs a sewer line,
Yeah.
if it has impact on your property. I'm not sure where your property is located.
101,
I'm right across from White
River
Tiles.
Hills Drive.
he's on this location.
Yeah. I'm right
Right
at
here
the
on the
corner.
corner. That sewer line would actually be tied in up the road from you,
Okay.
across River Hills Drive, up in front of the computer store and in front of the teller machine, all that area.
Okay.
So it would not impact your property at
That's-
all when a sewer tap was made.
That's my only question.
Yeah, that's what Mark said, and he said it would probably be
It just
drilled
goes straight
underneath.
across and bore under the
Bore right
road, and then
underneath.
there would have to be a little bit of excavation on the other side to make the tap, but it would deal more with that property owner than that one, completely, than Mr. Tap.
Is there anyone else that'd like to make comment to the commission?
I do have one more question.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. During the construction of his facility, will there be a whole lot of inconvenience for us getting in and out of our property because of sewer lines having been dug?
There shouldn't be any disruption on Jamestown Road.
Okay.
In the installation, the water line's on his side, so that tap should not be in the roadway pavement.
Okay.
The sewer line, they'll bore under, and then they'll have to work outside the road pavement to tie that in. So I don't anticipate any closures, and any construction that would take place there.
No
And there's also, there would have to be an encroachment permit from the Department of Transportation where any grading equipment, trucks, things of that nature would not drag mud out onto the roadway. That tends to be a concern of neighbors. So there's rules in place and permits to not allow that. So hopefully all that would not be a problem. If it does become a problem, then we have folks that would be notified, take care of that.
Okay, yes, such as water disruption or anything like that. So
Should
we
not
won't
be,
be without
yeah,
water
I doubt
or
you'll
power
see-
or anything.
Yeah, you should not see any disruption of service.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay, I'll close the public portion of this agenda item and bring it back to the commission for discussion, questions, or a motion. Tate, what do you think?
I think we ought to just turn it over to Lee to determine what the limits ought to be for the motion.
Okay, so we're going to take this from a traditional light industrial request to make it a conditional use request.
Would that be satisfactory, Lee?
I think we need to get, yeah, I think that's what direction it sounds like it's moving toward, more, a conditional use, general business conditional use request.
And let's address what
I've heard a few conditions that have been kind of tossed out on the discussion floor. Hours of operation, 6 to 10. An operation that is, has limited number of traffic counts coming in and out of the property. In other words, it's not a Kmart, it's not a Walmart, it's not a convenience store, it's not a another tire store. It's for the use that has been discussed is for warehousing and distribution of a small metal facility. So, is there any additional information or any additional uses that you want to allow on this, or is it tied specifically to this use? Because there's obviously a lot of general business uses, more general business uses than there are light industrial uses. So limiting to no other commercial type uses is pretty limiting. Much more limiting than what you did with the last rezoning request. So,
do you follow that discussion, Mr. Bowers?
I do, and I think Lee and I spoke about this the other day. I'm amicable to.
They can't hear you. It's going out live, and
I'm
so the
sorry.
folks
Okay.
watching television.
We did speak about this the other day. I am amicable to a conditional use type situation. However, you know, it's going to be a sizable investment on our part to locate a facility there, and you know, we anticipate running this business for, you know, really who knows how far down the road. But at some point, if you know, that would change, I want to be able to put another business or sell this to somebody that can put another business at that facility. So having a laundry list of all the different types of businesses that are not permitted there, you know, I think is rather limiting in some fashion. You know, I don't know how to address that, to be honest with you, Lee. I mean, I think the hours of operation is a big, you know, is a big limiting factor. You know, from 6 to 10, that imposes limitations there that, you know, we're not going to be making noise, or there's not going to be anything going on after that hour of the evening or before that hour in the daytime.
Okay. Need under the table permitted uses, would this be an approach to use it
You could.
to take the least impactful, if you would, to say it that way?
Yeah, it's harder to do in commercial. You can do it. You can circle uses and say, okay, but based on some of the conditions that were discussed, then if you want to keep it at a low type intensity use that you feel comfortable with, we only had one use thrown out on the table on this one. So obviously the front is already zoned commercial. That portion of the property could already be utilized for any commercial activity without any prohibition by the city other than just meeting the general guidelines. So convenience store, fast food restaurant, laundromat, 24-hour operation, 7 days a week can be operated there. Tire store is the same way. Luckily, they don't run air wrenches at midnight at that location, but there probably are businesses that are noisy at night in the after hours. The 6 to 10 is what we do in neighborhood business. There's some restrictions in neighborhood business type zoning that you might use as an example for something like this, because there's size of building limits, there's types of uses that are limiting. It probably wouldn't accommodate his use, but the general idea of what we do in neighborhood business is a business is located close to residential properties, and we try to find uses that are compatible with residential areas. That doesn't mean it's absolutely guaranteed you're not going to have any disruptions because it's still a business, and businesses can be disruptive adjacent to residential properties. You just have to decide how far you want to, what kind of conditions you want to push, and what he's willing to accept. Sounds like he's not willing to accept, but hours of operation
Let's
or
say I'm
limit.
not willing to accept, a reasonable compromise. I mean, I want to locate our business in Morganton, I want to locate it at this address, and, for the foreseeable future, I mean, we're going to be, our business will be located there. But like I said, not knowing, I've been in enough situations that you can't predict what the future holds. And,
certainly
and to limit ourselves too much at this juncture and not have an option down the road if something happens or, we need to change up, then, I'm a little concerned about that, I guess. But having said that, I'm not opposed to coming to a compromise that satisfies everyone involved.
Is it fair or too limiting to describe it as light distribution?
Sure.
Or is such a term?
Absolutely.
Is that too limiting, though, for your future?
No, I mean, that's, more than likely, the type of building that we're going to construct, if we would not have our business in it, is going to lend itself to another distribution-type business. So, I can't foresee a convenience store locating in my building. I can't foresee a bowling alley going in there. I mean, the building itself is going to limit what's going to locate there to some degree.
Personal comment, I would think that the area would have more concern about the front property than they do the back.
I think the time limit would probably be sufficient, and maybe a light distribution.
Limiting the hours still bothers me on a new business that's just getting started. Because when you've got a 2 or 3 person business and you have an emergency where you have to work to get a job out on time, you might extend past 10 at night. You might be in there till 1 in the morning. But I haven't heard any mention about noise being a factor. It just bothers me to restrict somebody at that stage of their development.
I also think that since the front part of the property is already zoned for what he's requesting, and he's just basically looking for the back part of it to construct the building, I don't know that since it's already zoned in the front, that there's going to be any adverse effect by just extending that to the back part of the property, to the neighborhood that it doesn't already feel from the front part of the property being already zoned that way.
Actually, it moves the business further back on the property, which is probably better, away from the houses that generally face along Jamestown Road to begin with.
Yep.
So I'm in agreement, David.
Okay. Let's come back to your motion.
I'll withdraw my time limit.
Charlie, would you like to frame one?
I've already made one, but does anyone else feel like I do about the hours? Would you like to make the motion?
My feeling, just to mirror what you said, is that with the operation interior to the building, I don't see that that's an adverse impact to the surrounding neighbors. And I'm like you on a new business. You need to be
Got to give the man a chance to grow.
handcuffed to operate your business.
Yeah. That's how this town has grown. That's the people starting just like that.
Now, we did have a comment about.
Happens to hit the mother load.
Now, we did have a comment about traffic counts or limiting traffic.
Yeah.
Is there a discussion on that?
Well, again, I'm with the front part being a general business. There'd be not very much that could be done to limit that anyway, would there?
Correct.
Not without a rezoning.
Right.
Changing it.
I think that then becomes a moot point.
I think it does too.
Heard that.
Okay, so we're basically looking at inside operations, limited to inside operations, and limited to the uses that would fall under a light distribution type category.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Could someone put that in the form of a motion?
So moved.
You agreeable
Okay, that'd be a
to
general,
that general condition?
Right.
general business conditional use zoning request with The items that you listed again, Lee, were,
Inside operations only and light distribution type uses only.
you're
I
comfortable
believe
with
he specified it would be warehouse and distribution. Is that what you said your prime business is? It's not retail.
No, our business is that.
Charlie Shy, I'll make that motion.
that? Okay, I've already got a motion
no
again from
hours to
Tate.
be
You wanna
worried
make that
about.
a second to
Okay,
that?
well, I appreciate that, thank you.
Is there any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition?
Okay, again, that,
That goes to the
that
city
motion will go to the city council and be advertised for February the 4th at 6 PM in this council chamber. And you're welcome to make comments, additional comments, and ask questions anytime between now and then.
And I misquoted, that's
decision.
like industrial conditional use. I'm sorry.
Again, that'll be the city council, that'll take that item up.
Okay. That's all of our new business. Is there any other items that we brought up for discussion? Lee, you have any comments or questions?
Next meeting, scheduled for February the 14th. There's currently no items, on the agenda for next month, but there certainly could be. It is budget season for the city. We're starting to make, requests for the coming year. One of the items that our department will be requesting is, consulting services for the development of a new zoning ordinance. You may recall I talked about this, back, I guess maybe back in the summer, that with the Mission 2030 plan adopted and now we're two or 3 years down the road, we're starting to see kind of what's working with the zoning ordinance and what's in conflict with the Mission 2030 plan. The next logical step, since we haven't adopted a new zoning ordinance since 1996, it's time to get a new set of regulations that are more in tune with what the direction was of the city council and the Mission 2030 team. So we'll see where that goes. We'll be asking the city council to make appropriations for that, but that would be in this coming year's budget if we can get approval.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Anyone else? Thank you, folks, for your attention and time, and move with adjourn.